of Elizabeth's friends envied her. She had landed such a wealthy and successful man. Though she seemed like any other girl, there was something about her that captivated Hector. At that time, Elizabeth was in her final year of university, studying to become a veterinarian. She had planned to return to her hometown, a small regional centre, after graduation, where she was expected to work as a specialist at the veterinary station. Hector, on the other hand, was already an established businessman. He was in the process of opening a new shoes manufacture. They were worlds apart, but fate had other plans. That day, Elizabeth was running late for her train and, in desperation, decided to hitchhike. Hector, as a gentleman, pulled over, gave her a ride to the station, and during the drive asked for her phone number. Elizabeth, without hesitation, gave him her number. She didn't expect anything to come of it, but it was flattering to have such a man show interest in her. And then everything moved quickly. Hector felt he couldn't find a better wife. Elizabeth was genuine, unlike most of the women in his circle. She had a great figure, a beautiful face, and intelligence to match. With her, he wouldn't be ashamed to go anywhere, as they say. In short, Elizabeth graduated in bride status. Their wedding application was already filed at the registry office, and the wedding was set for a month later. Only one thing marred Elizabeth's happiness. Hector's mother, Sarah, was prejudiced against her future daughter-in-law. While she appreciated Elizabeth's pretty face, her ability to hold a conversation, and her love for her son, she believed Hector could have found a wife from his own social circle, not some penniless girl. However, Sarah kept her thoughts to herself, at first. The wedding was wonderful, joyful, elegant, and held in an expensive restaurant. The bride was enchanting. Yes, Elizabeth's friends envied her. Everything seemed to work out perfect for her. After the wedding, the newlyweds moved into Hector's apartment. He immediately made it clear that his wife would not work. He could provide for his family himself. What more could she ask for? But Elizabeth didn't just sit around in the big apartment. She kept the place tidy, cooked delicious meals for her beloved husband, and eagerly awaited his return in the evenings. The only thing missing from this idyll was the sound of a child's laughter. At first, the young couple didn't think seriously about this, as they wanted to enjoy their life together. But time passed. Moreover, Sarah was always reminding them that it was time for her to become a grandmother. But there was no child. Elizabeth gently suggested that they both undergo medical checks, but Hector bristled at the idea. "What are you implying?" he said, his voice tinged with irritation. "I'm a man, and there's nothing wrong with me. If there's an issue, it must be with you. Go find out what's wrong." Elizabeth didn't argue, as she too suspected the problem might lie with her. She had been experiencing unusual pains, and her temperature would rise slightly in the evenings. She went to the clinic, where a standard examination led the doctor to suspect something more serious. Further testing revealed the grim truth. Elizabeth's health was in grave danger. Thoughts of pregnancy were replaced by the urgent need to fight for her life. "But don't despair," the doctor reassured her. "The diagnosis was made in time, so you have a good chance of a successful outcome." But he spoke so softly and pitifully that the young woman only became more upset. Of course, she told her husband everything, expecting his support. But he shocked her. "So, after the operation, you won't be able to have children?" was the first thing he asked. "Well, I don't know," Elizabeth stammered. "The doctors say everything will be decided during the operation. Whether they can leave my uterus intact or not. Honey, I'm so scared." Only then did her husband begin to offer words of sympathy. "Elizabeth, don't worry. With today's technology, everything will be fine. And we'll have children too." He murmured all these words, hugging his wife, but his voice lacked conviction, and his embrace felt distant. "Doctor suggested freezing my eggs. This is in case the operation is radical, or my self-feeling after chemotherapy does not return to normal for a long time." Hector didn't like what he had heard, but he paid for all the necessary procedures, including storing the material for several years ahead. Elizabeth felt a bit more at ease. Her husband's support gave her strength. When Sarah found out about Elizabeth's health situation, she was furious. "You've completely lost your mind," she screamed at him, hearing that news. "What do you need a sick wife for, and an infertile one at that? And if she does get pregnant after treatment, what kind of child will it be? It will definitely be a sick child." "Mum, why are you saying this?" Hector weakly objected. "There are many options now. Elizabeth doesn't have to conceive herself." "And what kind of mother will she be if she can't bear children? Hector, I don't understand you. Why are you so fixated on this girl? You are a healthy, wealthy young man. You can be happy now, not in some uncertain future." "What do you mean?" "I mean you should divorce Elizabeth. Find a worthy girl, not an outcast like her. Someone with good health, who can give me grandchildren." "But I love Elizabeth." "Oh, Lord, you're being naive. It's good that all this happened now. What if she had gotten pregnant and given birth to a sick child? Kick her out. Let her deal with her own problems." Hector muttered something in response, and Elizabeth lay in the next room, hearing every word. She couldn't even get up from the bed. The disease was progressing. She had no strength, a high fever and pain, not just physical but emotional. Her soul ached and cried. Where did all this malice, this hatred toward her, come from in her mother-in-law? Why did she immediately begin turning Hector against her, speaking loudly, knowing Elizabeth was lying sick in the next room? All this time, Elizabeth hoped that Hector would not take his mother's words to heart. However, that evening, he didn't even look in on her. And in the morning, when Elizabeth woke up to the alarm, she realized that he hadn't slept next to her and was already gone for work. Since then, everything between them had somehow fallen apart. Her husband constantly stayed late at work and barely spoke to her. One evening, Hector returned late, smelling of alcohol. Elizabeth, feeling a bit better, cooked his favourite dish, made a salad and baked a pie. "Dear, come eat," she said, trying to smile. She decided not to dwell on his condition or remind him of past offences. She couldn't afford to be stressed. The doctor had emphasised the importance of a positive mood and calmness. Only then could she hope to defeat the disease. But Hector was particularly gloomy that evening. "Do you think I will eat what you cooked with your poisonous hands?" he asked maliciously. "I am sick, but not poisonous," Elizabeth said in a trembling voice. "What are you talking about?" Hector sneered. "The doctors didn't even know what causes your disease. And you are so sure? Mum is right. Maybe you slept with everyone before me. That's the result." "Hector, you know that's not true," Elizabeth almost cried in response. "And I am no longer sure of anything, but one thing I know for sure, with you I don't see a future, so we will have to get a divorce." Hearing this, Elizabeth felt like she had been punched in the gut. "No, it can't be the truth," she thought. "He's going to abandon me at the most difficult moment of my life. How can he? He told me recently that he loved me." "I need a healthy woman, not a walking corpse," meanwhile, Hector said coldly. "So pack your things and get out of my apartment by tomorrow. I'll file for divorce myself. And, as a little favour, I won't cancel the contract for the clinic for storing your biological material. If you want to use it later, you can do it yourself. You should be grateful for this." After saying this, Hector turned sharply and left the kitchen. Elizabeth sat at the table, crying for a long time. She put the food away in the refrigerator, hoping that her husband had just been drunk and would regret his words in the morning. Then she lay alone in bed, listening to the sound of her drunken husband snoring in the living room. In the morning, Elizabeth was awakened by a loud knock. It was Hector standing in the bedroom doorway, not approaching her, not waking her with a kiss and an embrace as he used to. He just stood there, pounding his fist against the door. "Are you still sleeping?" he said roughly. "You have until noon. Pack your things and get out. I'll be back at 12 to check. If you're still here, I'll throw you out myself."
"Hector, I can't believe this is you," Elizabeth whispered. "You can't be this cruel."
"These words are useless," he replied. "I need a young, beautiful and healthy wife. You've turned into a skeleton in just a month. It's disgusting and repulsive to look at. You're spreading your disease around here."
"Who told you this is contagious?" Elizabeth asked, incredulous.
"My mother read it in some reputable publication. I've heard something similar before, so I don't want to take any risks."
"Ah, your mother. I see," Elizabeth said bitterly. "But Hector, you said you loved me."
"I loved a different Elizabeth," he said coldly. "The one who would go to restaurants and social events with me. The one who could have children. But you, like this, are of no use to me. I've said everything I have to say. Be gone by noon."
"But where am I supposed to go?" Elizabeth asked desperately. "And I have an operation scheduled for next week."
"I don't care where you go," he said, his voice cold and dismissive. "Go to your mother in the village." With that he turned and left, leaving Elizabeth shattered. Elizabeth found herself adrift, with nowhere to go and barely any money to her name. She had never thought to save, always leaning on the security of her husband. But now that security had vanished, and she was left to face the harsh reality alone. Desperate, she reached out to her university friends, those she had drifted away from after marriage, but still held a tenuous connection with. One friend was away on a business trip, another was hosting relatives. It was Catherine, the most prickly and challenging of her friends, with whom she had often butted heads during their student days, who offered a lifeline. "I'm coming for you," Catherine said without hesitation, and true to her word, she arrived within 30 minutes. She helped Elizabeth gather her belongings and move, providing a glimmer of hope in the midst of her despair. Elizabeth hadn't accumulated many belongings during her marriage. In fact, she had gained nothing and lost everything: her faith in love, her sense of security, and the support of a man. But this was not the final blow. That evening she received a call from the doctor at the clinic, informing her that Hector had cancelled the contract for her medical procedures, making the operation impossible unless Elizabeth could find a way to pay for it herself. She had no money.
"Hector, why did you do this? Why did you cancel the contract?"
She called her husband and asked through tears. "I decided that this clinic was too expensive," he replied. "The operation, the treatment. Listen, thousands of other people get treated in ordinary hospitals. What makes you so special?" There was no point in talking to him any more, and Elizabeth hung up. At that moment, Catherine was her rock, stepping in with priceless support. She quickly secured Elizabeth an appointment with another doctor, but precious time had been lost. The doctor could no longer offer any guarantees. Then came the operation, followed by several grueling courses of chemotherapy, all of which tested Elizabeth's strength to its limits. Throughout these dark and agonizing times, Catherine remained an unshakable pillar of support, steadfastly by Elizabeth's side. Her mother was also by her side during this time, offering comfort and care. Only Hector remained absent, not bothering to call even once. When Elizabeth had regained some strength, Catherine handed her the papers that had arrived by mail. It turned out that Hector had already filed for divorce. "Well managed, Elizabeth," Catherine reassured her, her voice steady and confident. But Elizabeth felt only emptiness inside, a hollow ache where love and hope had once resided. It was as if her own body had betrayed her, leaving her with an overwhelming sense of emptiness, and yet bit by bit, with tiny steps, she began to move forward, as if awakening from a deep sleep. At that time, Catherine was working at a veterinary clinic, and she offered Elizabeth a job there. "Our boss is great, such a nice guy. I'm sure he'll take you. Besides, we have an opening," Catherine told her. Of course, Elizabeth agreed with pleasure. But at the interview she was stunned. Unlike Catherine's description, the clinic owner seemed gloomy and even harsh to her during the interview. "Never worked in the field before?" he asked, looking through Elizabeth's diploma. "Yes, that's how it turned out," Elizabeth nodded. And what do you suggest I do with you?" Glenn Edwards frowned even more. "We have practical work here. There's no time to repeat theory." "I know the theory," Elizabeth assured him. "I studied well at the university. Catherine can confirm." Glenn sneered. "This Catherine also said you have a lot of experience, but I don't see any documentary confirmation of that." "I have experience. When I lived with my mum in the countryside, I treated all the dogs and cats in the area, and even a few cows." "All right, I understand your circumstances. There is no need to spend our time." Elizabeth stood up and reached for her papers. Glenn Edwards stopped her irritably. "I haven't said anything yet, and you're already running away. I'll hire you, but you should understand me. I worry a lot about my clinic and its name, and I want real professionals to work here." "I understand," Elizabeth nodded. "Believe me, I won't let you down."
"Well, let's hope so."
Mr. Edwards smiled, and Elizabeth noted with surprise that there was a rather nice, kind man beneath the harsh exterior of the grumpy boss. Later, Catherine confessed that her boss had reluctantly agreed to let Elizabeth come for an interview. He didn't want to hire a woman. In the clinic, besides the doctors, only Catherine was a woman, but he considered her as a very valuable specialist. His wife cheated on him and ran away with her lover, Catherine told Elizabeth, and it's been 5 years since he's been living alone, and no one knows anything about his personal life. He simply doesn't have one. "And why don't you look at him more closely?" Elizabeth smiled. "Me? To marry a vet? Oh, no. One in the house is enough," Catherine laughed. "Besides, you know, I've had a romance for a long time now." Yes, Elizabeth knew about this romance. For several years now she had been corresponding online with a man. His name was Javier, and he lived far away, on the other side of the country. And although it was just communication, Catherine seemed to have fallen for her virtual friend with all her heart. So Elizabeth started working at the clinic, and for the first time in a long time, she felt interested in life. And it was all thanks to her 4-legged patients and their worried owners. The young and attentive doctor quickly gained the trust of the pet owners, and their pets listened to her as if she were a magician. Catherine even joked that Elizabeth hypnotized them or something. But no, of course not. Perhaps it's true what they say, that animals can sense a good person. Her new boss also began to look at her more and more attentively, and he looked at her not just as a boss, at his subordinate. Elizabeth shared her thoughts with Catherine. "I've noticed that Mr. Edwards has changed, become softer. He's definitely fallen in love with you." Catherine nodded confidently. "So take him while he's interested in you." "Oh, I don't want anything with men any more. I can't have a personal life any more." Elizabeth waved her hand and added bitterly, "Besides, I'll never be a mother, and the ability to become a mother is the most important thing in women for a man." "Oh, Elizabeth, you're complicating things." Catherine laughed. "Just date him. A little romance never hurts anyone." "I don't want any romance," Elizabeth said, shaking her head. "It's all nonsense." The story with Hector and her path to recovery had been hard on her. She couldn't imagine being with anyone else. But then something happened that Elizabeth least expected. One day Catherine announced that she was moving in with her boyfriend, Javier. Of course, Elizabeth tried to talk her out of it. They didn't know each other much, and Catherine had an established life here. "No, my dear, I'm going to Javier," Catherine said firmly. "He has a house there, his own farm. I have already decided." And soon Catherine did exactly as she planned. She quit her job, shocking everyone, packed her things, and left to a distant state. Elizabeth started to live alone, and to be honest, she liked it, though life soon threw her another surprise. One day, on her way back from work, she ran into Sarah, her former mother-in-law. As always, the woman looked well-groomed with a haughty expression. Seeing Elizabeth, she didn't change her expression, but she approached her. "Hello, Elizabeth," she said, her sharp eyes fixed on the young woman. "What a surprise! How are you?" "Fine, thank you," Elizabeth replied calmly. "And you?" "Wonderful," Sarah said. "So, you've recovered?" "Were you expecting something different?" Elizabeth smiled. Sarah pursed her lips. "You haven't changed at all." Elizabeth had no desire to continue the conversation and prepared to leave. "Don't you want to know how Hector is doing?" Sarah asked the unexpected question. Elizabeth just shook her head, but Sarah was unstoppable. "Hector got married, and he has twin sons now." It was the last straw, and Catherine rushed to get away from her former mother-in-law. And though she told herself it didn't matter, it still hurt. So Hector had children now, and she was empty, and nothing could change that. She often thought about her biological material stored at the clinic, but even if it was still there, she had no way of knowing if Hector had cancelled the contract and demanded his money back. And even if she could use it, she couldn't carry a child to term herself. It was unfair and painful, but nothing could be changed now. A few days later, during her lunch break, Elizabeth's phone rang. For a moment, she thought she was imagining it. It was Hector, her ex-husband. "So, you're alive and well," he said instead of a greeting. "And hello to you too, Hector," Elizabeth replied calmly, surprising even herself. "Did your mother tell you about our encounter?" "Yes, she did," Hector said, sounding irritated. "We need to meet. There's something we need to discuss." "Need?" Elizabeth scoffed. "I don't need to." "You'll be very surprised when you find out everything," Hector said. "Surprised? I was surprised you kicked me out of your life. Now nothing can surprise me any more," Elizabeth replied. "Tomorrow at 5 in the park where we used to walk," Hector said and hung up. Elizabeth stood for a while, confused, listening to the short beeps from the phone. Yes, she often walked in the park with Hector when they had just started dating. Those were such wonderful times. It seemed that their love would last forever. But it turned out differently. And what does Hector want now? Does he really want to reconcile? But he is married. Besides, Elizabeth will never forgive him for everything that happened. And yet she decided to meet with him. Yes, let him see. this scoundrel who called her poisonous, that she, as before, is young and beautiful. At the appointed time, Elizabeth was on the spot. It was a golden autumn. The trees were ablaze with red and orange, and the air was crisp and cool. God, what beauty! Memories of walks with Hector flooded back, and her heart ached with a mix of nostalgia and pain. Then she saw him. Hector was walking along the path, pushing a large stroller in front of him, the kind usually used for twins. Sarah had mentioned something about his children, but why had he brought them here? To make Elizabeth feel even worse? He approached the bench, and she slowly stood up, looking at him questioningly. "Take your brats, or I'll give them to an orphanage," Hector said maliciously. "I don't understand," Elizabeth said slowly. "You're talking about your children like that? But what do I have to do with it?" "What an idiot you are! And how could I marry you?" Hector hissed through his teeth. Then he fell silent, sat down on the bench, putting the stroller next to him, and began to explain something. And the more Elizabeth listened to him, the more she was shocked. As it turned out, just a couple of weeks after Elizabeth left, Hector started dating a very attractive woman named Emily. She was everything he could have wanted: beautiful, charming, and from a wonderful family. Her father was a top manager at the bank, which was a great support for Hector. He could take out loans on favourable terms, or just borrow money when needed. Hector's mother was also delighted with her new daughter-in-law. After a while, Hector wanted to continue his lineage. At first he hinted, and then directly told his wife that he wanted a child, preferably a son. Emily, however, was not thrilled by this idea. Why did she need children? She was still so young and didn't want to ruin her figure. But Hector insisted. He even offered his wife the services of another woman, if Emily didn't want to bear the inconveniences of pregnancy herself. Emily agreed, and the clinic where Elizabeth's samples were kept also took her eggs. And so, at the appointed time, Hector and Emily's two wonderful twin boys were born. It seemed like a dream come true. But Emily did not share Hector's joy. She felt no maternal instinct for the children. The twins were restless and demanding, and Emily found them to be a nightmare. She continued to indulge in spa treatments, shopping, and outings with friends, while a nanny took care of the babies. Hector, as usual, was focused on his work. He saw the children only in the evenings. Despite his wife's lack of interest in the sons, he was happy. But then the children got sick. They had to be taken to the hospital, and there Hector found out that the blood type of the babies was such that he and Emily could not be their biological parents. Hector was shocked. How could this happen? After all, everything was done in the clinic, where everything is strictly controlled. However, the DNA test indicated that he and Emily were not the biological parents. Hector rushed to the clinic to sort it all out. The doctor denied everything at first, but eventually admitted that Emily had persuaded them to fake the results. When Hector's biological material was examined, it turned out that he could not have children at all. Emily was the first to find out, but she didn't tell Hector anything. Instead, she and her father persuaded the doctors to keep quiet, and then persuaded them to use the material of an unknown donor. But that was half the trouble. It turned out that by chance they had mixed up Elizabeth's samples, not Emily's, because they have the same surnames and their names start with the same letters. When Hector found out everything, he was furious. He wanted to kick Emily out and confront his father-in-law, but then he calmed down a bit. Sarah convinced him not to get too heated, After all, the family looked perfect from the outside. His wife was beautiful, and the children were wonderful. But now, knowing the truth, Hector couldn't look at the children with the same affection. They weren't his, but Elizabeth's and some unknown man's. If before their cries only filled him with tenderness, now they filled him with anger. Then Emily suggested giving the children up for adoption, and Hector agreed with joy, as he couldn't raise someone else's children. He also wanted to see the clinic, but he calmed down, realizing that this could harm all of them, and that was no longer necessary for Hector. Wealth held sway over all other considerations. Then one day Sarah chanced upon Elizabeth on the street, and after that encounter she urged her son to entrust the children to Elizabeth, for they had a true mother, regardless of the circumstances. Perhaps a flicker of conscience had ignited within Elizabeth's former mother-in-law. "I have the DNA test results, if you require proof," Hector stated firmly. "You are their mother, though you are welcome to conduct your own test if you wish." With trembling hands, Elizabeth approached the stroller and gazed inside. 2 babies slept peacefully, their tiny chests rising and falling with each breath. Her heart overflowed with joy. Yes, she became a mother, in the most unexpected and miraculous way. She looked at Hector and whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" he asked, surprised. "I thought you'd be angry." "No, I'm grateful to you for keeping your promise and not cancelling the contract with the clinic," Elizabeth said. Hector just shrugged. He didn't tell her that he had simply forgotten about it when he got involved with Emily. Otherwise, he would have definitely demanded his money back, despite what he had promised Elizabeth during the divorce. "So you're taking them?" he asked. "Of course," Elizabeth replied. "Excellent," Hector said, a note of relief in his voice. "Tell me where to bring their things and everything they need." He was being surprisingly generous now. Elizabeth even managed to smile, though she gave him the address, knowing the babies required a lot right now, and she couldn't handle it alone. That same evening, everything the babies needed was delivered to Elizabeth. Hector called to inform her that he would take care of all the documentation as soon as possible. He even transferred some money for now, specifying that it was a one-time gesture. Elizabeth thanked him for everything. She thanked the man who had once cast her aside like a sick, unwanted kitten, but she no longer held a grudge against Hector. Let him live as he pleases. It was late that night, after putting the babies to bed, that Elizabeth remembered the clinic. How was she supposed to work now? She called her boss. "Mr. Edwards, I'm sorry to call so late, but I need to inform you I won't be able to work in the near future," she told the owner of the vet clinic. "Are you sick?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "No, it's something else." Elizabeth hesitated before blurting out, "I've become a mother." "What? Just like that?" Glenn was surprised, and Elizabeth briefly explained the situation. He listened intently without interrupting. "What am I going to do? I have a busy period coming up and I still need to find a replacement for you, since no one has taken Catherine's place yet." He said this with a hint of annoyance, but then softened his tone. "But still, I'm very glad for you. I hope everything works out." They discussed all the details, and Elizabeth thanked her boss for his understanding. Then she went to the room with her babies. Ahead were many bureaucratic procedures and sleepless nights, but Elizabeth believed she would manage everything, because now she was a mother. Almost the next day, her mother, who had so suddenly become a grandmother, came to help Elizabeth. Of course, there was initial shock from such a turn of events, But the woman quickly embraced her new role and lovingly cared for her grandchildren. One day Glenn visited Elizabeth. He brought some diapers, toys and baby accessories. He handed this to Elizabeth with some embarrassment, stepping over the threshold of the apartment. The woman smiled, touched by his thoughtfulness. After that, Glenn began to visit them more and more often, and they even sometimes went out for a walk together. Elizabeth, Glenn, and the babies. No, there was nothing romantic between Elizabeth and Glenn. They were just good friends. But then a new trial came. The guardianship agency suddenly declared that they could not leave the children with Elizabeth, even though she was their biological mother. Her lack of a stable home and low income made her unfit in their eyes. The children would be better off in a foster home. Elizabeth was in shock. Would they really take away her happiness of being a mother? And then Glenn came to the rescue. He proposed to her. What? I have a good income, a nice apartment and a car. The guardianship agency would not object. And honestly, I propose to you not only for the sake of the children. He finished his proposal awkwardly. And why else? Elizabeth was taken aback. Glenn, I've already told you. We will never have children of our own. And what's wrong with it? Glenn smiled. We already have 2. And he carefully pulled Elizabeth towards him, kissed her, and she responded. Soon they got married and started living as one family. The babies became their children by law. Elizabeth's mother returned home, content that her daughter had finally found her happiness. As the twins grew older, their resemblance to Glenn became increasingly unmistakable. Elizabeth would often smile at the sight, marvelling at the twist of fate. Glenn, too, would gaze at his sons with a mixture of wonder and uncertainty, his eyes lingering on their features. One day he shared a revelation with Elizabeth that left her stunned. It turned out that he had once been a donor at the same reproductive centre. During a challenging time in his life, when financial struggles had weighed heavily on him, he had made a decision he later tried to forget. As life improved and stability returned, he had pushed the memory aside, never expecting it to resurface in such an extraordinary way. And what if our boys are biologically mine? Glenn suggested once, and they made a DNA test which soon confirmed that the man was the biological father of the twins. In the end, everyone in this story found happiness, except for Hector. Though he lived with Emily, their faces gracing the covers of glossy magazines, their home remained empty.